Well, shalom and happy Purim. I'm going to try this again. I tried to record an earlier version of this and it wound up being too long, so I'll try to stick more to my time limit. It is Purim. Purim has begun this evening, March 6th, Tuesday evening, March 6, 2012. As you can see, the sun has set and it is nighttime here in Portland, Oregon. Purim has begun tonight. It goes through tomorrow, Wednesday, March 7th, and also Thursday, March 8th. Some of you may be confused because the Jewish people actually don't start Purim until tomorrow evening, Wednesday night, and they celebrate it Thursday and Friday. The reason they celebrate it a day later is because rather than following the scriptural calendar and starting the month of Adar, the 12th month, when the moon is completely black, or the conjunctive new moon over Jerusalem, they use a rabbinical pre-calculated formula to determine when their month begins, and it's completely separated from the moon itself. So that's why they're starting Purim a day late. But Purim does start tonight, and you can read anything you want about the calendar. I have links on that on my website. But tomorrow, hopefully, we're going to have a whole section that's going to be dedicated to Purim. And we're going to have articles and resources that you can read about to better acquaint yourself with this holiday if you don't know much about it. I wrote an article tonight about Purim, and hopefully we're going to have it up on the web tomorrow under this section. And I just explore one of the themes, or a couple of the themes in Purim that I think sometimes get ignored, because, you know, Purim, for those who celebrate it, it's a very fun celebration because everyone dresses up in costumes. People dress up as the arrogant, evil Haman, or the righteous Mordecai, or the humble Queen Esther, or the King Ahasuerus, and they dress up and they reenact the story, and it's a lot of fun. But because of all the pageantry and the costumes and the fun, people can sometimes forget about some of the very important themes that are explored in Purim and in the book of Esther, and I attempt to do that in my article, so I hope it blesses you. So we'll try to have that up on the website tomorrow during the first day of Purim. But tonight, I want to discuss the prophetic significance of Purim. You know, in Colossians chapter 2, the Apostle Paul said very clearly that these feast days, these Hebrew feast days, are shadows of things to come. Now, he penned those words several decades after the resurrection. And in fact, we know that Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Tabernacles, the fall feasts, are pointing toward events that have not yet occurred yet. But Hanukkah and Purim also contain prophetic elements that point toward things still yet to come. And in fact, one of the reasons why Daniel, in the book of Daniel, was unable to understand some of the dates and the things that the angel was showing him is because the feast of both Purim and Hanukkah had not yet been instituted. Purim would be instituted shortly after the time of Daniel, and then, of course, the feast of Hanukkah would not be established for a couple of centuries later. And these are two feasts that are critical to understanding the timing of the events in the book of Revelation. We have a whole section dedicated to Hanukkah, and we discuss the prophetic significance of Hanukkah, so you can look at that section if you'd like. But tonight we're going to talk about Purim. And, you know, there's a lot of Messianics out there and Hebrew roots people who say, well, we shouldn't celebrate Purim or Hanukkah because they're not one of the 7 feasts that are mentioned in Leviticus 23. That's true. Hanukkah and Purim are not mentioned in Leviticus 23, but I do believe Hanukkah and Purim are just as important as the 7 biblical feasts. In fact, I think these feasts are biblical. Purim certainly is a biblical feast because it's in the Bible. All you have to do is go to the book of Esther, and you will see how one woman named Queen Esther submitted to her uncle, trusted in Yah, and Yahweh wrought victory. And then the Jews very rightly responded to this by creating a memorial and instituting that for 2 days they were going to celebrate Purim in the month of Adar when these events occurred. And I think it was to honor Yah. So Purim is certainly a celebration we should keep. It's a biblical celebration. We know from the Gospel of John that Yahshua kept the Feast of Dedication, the Feast of Hanukkah. So of course, he was Jewish. He of course celebrated the Feast of Purim as well. So we should celebrate Purim. And one of the greatest reasons to celebrate Purim, and this is apart from the reasons I go over in my article and from the reasons you'll hear from rabbis and Messianic teachers when they talk about how Purim is about victory. And it is. It's about victory, spiritual victory. It's about how Yah can turn around very evil situations in your life and cause great good to come from them if you trust in Him. Even if it jeopardizes your reputation or jeopardizes something precious to you, if you trust in Yah above all else and do what He says, then even the most tragic, evil situations that are in your life or are ready to spring in your life can be totally turned on their head. And that's what we see in Purim. If you're not familiar with the story of Purim, I encourage you to read the book of Esther, because it's an amazing story about how Yah takes a very evil situation that was basically going to lead to the complete genocide of the Jewish people in the land of Persia, which was the world empire at the time, and how that situation is totally flipped on its head. And not only is Haman, who tried to enact this plan, not only is he killed on the very stake that he was going to kill Mordecai, but all those who were going to follow Haman's orders and commit genocide and slaughter the Jews, they themselves were slaughtered by the Jewish people with the blessing of the king of Persia. So this very, very devastating, tragic, evil situation that was about to explode across the empire was completely reversed, and it was an amazing victory. So it's an awesome, very inspiring story. This is a season of victory. This is a time when Yah will take situations and tragedies that you've been through or that are looming in your life, and this is times when He will test your character like He tested Queen Esther, and if you trust in Him and you pass that test, He will turn these situations around and He will bless you. You can read more about that in the article that will be posted tomorrow on the website. So the prophetic significance of Purim. Purim has a lot to do with the Antichrist and with the rise of the Antichrist, because a lot of the story of Purim is about Haman, who is a very Antichrist figure. He wants the Jews destroyed. Mordecai refused to bow down to him, and so he swears that he's going to use his power and influence and authority that he has with the king to destroy the Jews, and he almost gets away with it. There is a trilogy, it's the second trilogy of articles on my website, where I talk about how in the year 2014, 3 days before the Feast of Purim in 2014, I believe is when the Antichrist is going to rise to power. Now, why 3 days? Well, you can read the article and find out. But basically, Esther, when she had agreed with Mordecai to help him and to risk her own life to approach the king and try to expose Haman, she first prayed and fasted for 3 days. So just prior to that, 3 days before Purim, was when Haman was sort of at the height, the zenith of his power. Mordecai and Esther had not entered into an agreement yet. She had not fasted and prayed. Haman had not been exposed, and that was when he was at the height of his power. So I believe it's going to be 3 days before that feast. And in fact, if you count 3 days before that feast until Yom Teruah 2017, it's exactly 1,290 days, which is a time period listed in the book of Daniel, chapter 12. Excuse the sirens. I live in downtown Portland, and this is what you have to deal with. Anyway, as I was saying, so we can understand that this time period, and Purim usually occurs anywhere between mid-February and mid-March, so late winter, basically. But that this time period, this time of late winter, is going to be the time when the Antichrist rises to power. So when he desecrates the temple, when he commits the abomination of desolation, when he rises to his power and consolidates his rule over the earth, we don't need to be shaken by these things, because we're going to know, oh yeah, it's late winter, it's the time of Purim, this is when this should happen. This is the time when Haman rose to power, and when he was about to threaten the Jews. But just like with Haman, the Antichrist is going to meet his end. The very devastation that he seeks to wreak against the Jews and against believers is ultimately going to be visited upon his head. Not immediately, as was the case with Haman, but 3.5 years later, in 2017, he'll meet his end. So we can take encouragement from that. Purim, by celebrating Purim, by meditating and reflecting on the themes in the book of Esther and understanding what Yah did during this feast, Purim can give us a great deal of comfort and encouragement and inspiration and joy during what's otherwise a pretty dark period of time. I mean, this is late winter. A lot of areas, especially in the north, like where I live in Oregon, it's still very dark and gloomy and rainy and cold. And so it can be a tough time of year. But Purim is certainly a wonderful way to brighten things up and give a great celebration as we're about to end the Hebrew year, actually, because the Hebrew year, the new one, will begin on March 23rd. So I encourage you, obey the Scriptures and observe Purim, and realize that it has great prophetic significance for the times to come. Shalom, and I pray this was a blessing to you.